Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today is the 28th of August, and we're on page 76 of the magazine. Today is the second day of a two-day article, and it's called Great Dads of the Animal Kingdom.
我们的中文标题是父爱无敌，动物界里的好爸爸。
So this article basically is talking about these very rare cases where fathers are actually involved in raising their offspring in the animal world. And these 5 cases, we saw 2 of them yesterday, and they were both birds, and the ones today are all water-based animals. So it's interesting. Let's talk a little bit about article organization. If you have basically 5 things to talk about in an article, how do you organize them? How do you decide which to talk about first? The classic organizational technique for English is that you leave the most interesting one for the end, or the most important one for the end. But you can't start off with the least important one because then you won't attract people into the article. So if you have a list of 3, and 1 is the most important and 3 is the least important, this is the order you do it. 2, 3, 1. Now, if you're doing a list of 5, you also still want to do the most important thing or the most interesting thing last, but it's a little more subtle because you want to keep people's interest through your list. So I would start off again with 2, the second most interesting one, and then I would go to 4, and then I would do 3, and then I would do 5, and then I would do 1. So it's like second most interesting, fourth most interesting, and then back to third most interesting to keep people's interest up in the middle, and then the least interesting, and then the most interesting. And that sounds a little complicated, and you don't have to do it that complicated. You could just do 2, 3, 4, 5, 1.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, but in this article here, we've got 5 equally interesting animals, and there's not one that's more important or more interesting than the other. So how do you organize that? Well, we're organizing it in 2 different ways. First of all, yesterday we talked about how the author apparently picked out the most contrasty cases where there's a penguin that's in cold and stillness, and then there's a sand grouse that has to travel really far in the heat. And both those contrasts are interesting. But today we can also tell that there's another kind of organization that the author had in mind. Yesterday we talked about the 2 birds. Today we're talking about the 3 water-based animals. So we're basically grouping things in like categories, and we're also grouping things in terms of contrast or similarity. So there's lots of ways, it turns out, to organize your article, but if you have a reason for doing it, your audience will appreciate it. They will feel more interested in your article if you give it some sort of organization that makes it feel logical.
好，那刚刚这个 Angela 老师告诉我们我们文章怎么样这个安排我们的结构例如说我现在谈3件事情好，那这个重要性最重要的是1那次重要的是2，最不重要的是3。那英文里面通常会把最重要的放在最后，那但是也不能说一开始就讲很无聊的东西，这样读者都跑掉了，所以次重要的通常放第1，然后在最后再放最重要的。所以如果是只有3样东西的话，通常我们的顺序是2、3、1 2是次重要的放最前面，中间放3，然后1最重要的放最后。那如果今天我们有5样东西一样按照重要性来排，分别是从1到5的话呢，通常我们的排法建议的排法是2、4、3、5、1因为你2讲完之后呢，你拿一个比较不是那么重要的先拿出来讲一讲可是你不能一直讲这个最不重要，因为读者就会跑掉，所以你4讲完之后马上再讲一个3那再让他们觉得有趣然后呢3讲完之后呢，再把最不重要的5讲完，那5讲完之后读者要跑光了你之后再回到1这样的话就可以不断吸引读者，所以是2、4、3、5、1。好，那另外分类的话呢，像我们可以像昨天的文章我们可以有 contrast， 如果这2样东西可以有对比的话，那可以把它放在一起。那像今天的话呢，这3样东西通通都是跟水生植物的这个生物有关，所以我们也把它放在一起。好，那另外一个要提醒各位注意，就是刚刚 Angela 老师讲说，昨天我们谈到2种 bird 一个是企鹅一个是沙鸡，所以你知道这个企鹅在英文里面它也是 bird 的一种。
Okay, so yesterday we talked a little bit about the emperor penguin, how the mother basically just leaves and the father has to take care of the egg. And then we also talked about the Namaqua sand grouse, where the father has to travel to water holes to bring water back for the chicks, which kind of blew my mind because I never thought about birds drinking before in my life. And so I think most birds get their liquids from the food they eat. So I guess these Namaqua sand grouse chicks have very dry food. I don't know. It just blew my mind. I never thought about this before. Anyways, today we have three animals. We have the seahorse and Darwin's frog and the clownfish. So let's get into it. The seahorse, bearing the burden. The behavior of the emperor penguin and the Namaqua sand grouse are just two examples of fatherly dedication. The male seahorse takes it to another level. This aquatic creature doesn't just look after its young, it gives birth to them. After the female seahorse deposits her eggs in the male's pouch, the male carries them for up to 45 days before they hatch. The parental duties end there, though, as neither the male nor female takes care of their offspring after that. Darwin's frog, carrying the offspring. Another devoted male parent is Darwin's frog. When Charles Darwin first spotted this creature in Chile in 1834, he noted it appeared puffed up, as if it had swallowed a lot of air or food. Later, the real reason for this appearance was discovered. The frog picks up tadpoles shortly after they hatch and carries them in its mouth as they develop. This keeps them comfortable and protected from predators for about 2 months, when they are spit out of the dad's mouth as small frogs. The clownfish, starting out as male. Things really get interesting when it comes to clownfish. All clownfish are born male, though all carry male and female sex organs. Groups are composed of a single dominant female and dozens of males, and when she dies, the strongest male in the bunch will shift its sex. After a female lays as many as 1,000 eggs, a male fertilizes them and will then watch over them for 6 to 10 days until they hatch. It may be hard to choose exactly which species deserves the Dad of the Year prize, but it's safe to say that there are several males that could compete for such an award. Okay, so the seahorse is interesting. Talking about article organization again, we could have actually compared the seahorse with the emperor penguin as two different animals doing very similar jobs, which is both of their jobs is to watch over the eggs until it hatches. The female lays the eggs, and then the male will take care of them in their own way. So the emperor penguin will sit on the egg to keep it warm, and the seahorse actually takes the eggs into their pouch to take care of them until they hatch. So that's interesting.
Yeah, 好，所以我们看到这个海马哈，他们也是其实会把他们的这个宝宝呢，把它带在身上哈，好好的养育。好，所以我们其实也可以把海马跟这个昨天的皇帝企鹅放在一起讲，也可以，那是另外一种分类的方式啊。所以我们可以看到说，这个海马它是 bearing the burden 啊 ，bearing 就是负担的意思啊，负担这个重担，它身负重担。
So the first sentence says, the behavior of the emperor penguin and the Namaqua sand grouse are just two examples of fatherly dedication. Aside from the sort of emotional hyperbole of fatherly dedication, what they're saying is that basically they've got the same or a similar job.
好，所以这个皇帝企鹅哈，还有这个Namaqua 沙鸡哈，只不过是两个例子。什么的例子呢 ？Two examples of fatherly dedication 啊，父亲的奉献 ，dedication 是奉献。
Now, the male seahorse takes it to another level. So our author believes that the male seahorse is doing a harder job than the emperor penguin, which I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, takes it to another level 哈，就 another level 就是更上一层的意思。好，所以这个海马跟我们前面比起来，这个皇帝企鹅还有这个 Namaqua 这个沙鸡来讲呢，它更上一层啊。当然，这个是作者的感觉。那其实我觉得都很不简单的。
Now, the author claims that this aquatic creature doesn't look after its young, doesn't just look after it, it doesn't just take care of its young. The author is claiming that it gives birth to them, and I have to disagree. The seahorse isn't releasing the eggs from an internal organ. The seahorse is just letting the eggs out of its pouch. That's not the same thing, and I wouldn't make this equivalence. I think it's inaccurate to make this equivalence.
好，所以呢，这个地方呢，作者说啊，这个海马呢会生出小海马，但其实它不是生出小海马，这个还是要靠母海马把那个卵啊，这个受精的卵放到它的公海马的这个 pouch 啊，它那个育儿袋里面啊，所以它只是把让这些小海马从育儿袋里面出来啊，孵化啊，那而不是它生出来啊，所以这个地方呢，可能不同的作者会有不同的这个写法啊。那在这里 gives birth to， 其实你可以说它不是那么的精密 ，yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the same as the Darwin's frog carrying the tadpoles in its mouth. It's just keeping it inside a body orifice for a time. It's not the same as producing live young from your organ, from your uterus.
Yeah, 所以这些爸爸他们还是不简单啊，但是他们只不过是带着这个受精的卵，或者带着他们小宝宝啊，带在自己身上啊，所以他并不是说真的生下了他们。好，所以呢，我们可以看到这一句，他说 this aquatic 就是水生的 creature 就是生物，它并不单单的 doesn't just look after its young 啊 young 就是 offspring 啊，就它的后代，所以它并不是单单的照顾它的后代。
So what happens is the female seahorse deposits her eggs in the male's pouch. So the male has a little kangaroo pouch, which is cute. And then the female puts the eggs there, and then the male carries them for up to 45 days. He just hangs out with the eggs before they hatch. And I don't think that's a harder job than keeping an egg warm balanced on your feet. So I think that it's an easier job than the emperor penguin.
好，那感觉起来皇帝企鹅比较辛苦哈。那不过在这里我们可以看到说，在这个母的海马哈，这个 deposit 这个很有趣哈，这个 deposit 就是放的意思哈 ，put down 或者 place 的意思。它把它的蛋呢放在这个公海马的这个 pouch 育儿袋里面。那在这它放进去之后呢，那变成换这个公的海马呢 carries them for up to 啊，就带着这些卵可以高达到45天 before they hatch， 一直到这个蛋孵出来，这个卵孵出来为止。
And the parental duties end there because neither the female nor the male takes care of their offspring after that. They're all like, okay, have a good life. Bye.
好，所以这个他父母这两爸爸跟妈妈的 duties， 他们的责任呢 end there， 就此打住啊，就是孵化出来，好，爸爸妈妈就没事了，就不管你们了啊。though 是不过哈，不过虽然说他们这么辛苦哈，背个高达45天啊，但是等到小孩嘛孵出来之后啊，事情就结束了。as 是因为呢 neither the male nor female， 因为不管是男的女的都不啊 neither nor 是两个二者皆非皆不啊，所以他们两个都不会怎么样 takes care of their offspring after that， 所以这个孵化完之后，海马爸爸海马妈妈都不会照顾他的后代。
And that's the difference between fish and mammals. Mammals have a slightly longer job.
所以这个基本上是鱼跟哺乳动物不太一样的地方，因为哺乳动物嘛，它会哺乳嘛，所以它小孩生下来之后，它还需要一段时间照顾这个小的。
The next one is Darwin's frog, and they're another devoted male parent.
那我们接下来呢，看到这个达尔文蛙，那他是 carrying the offspring， 他是带着孩子拍照啊。这个 offspring 各位可以注意到，他都没有加 s 的。
So why are they called Darwin's frog? Well, they're named after actually Charles Darwin because he's the one that found them. And when he first spotted this creature in Chile in 1834, he noted it appeared puffed up. Puffed up is another way to say swollen. It like seems to be full of something, as if it had swallowed a lot of air or food. It seemed strangely like puffed up.
好，所以为什么叫达尔文蛙呢？因为是达尔文发现的。好，所以当达尔文第一次 spotted， 当他第一次看到这个生物的时候呢，是在哪里呢？是在智利。好，那这1834年，他第一次看到的时候呢 ，he noted， 啊，他注意到说 it appeared， 感觉起来啊，看起来外表啊，看起来好像怎么样 puffed up， 鼓鼓的啊 ，swollen。 好 as if 就好像 it had swallowed 就好像它吞下了 a lot of air or food 好像它吞下了很多的空气或者很多的食物。
Later, the real reason for this appearance was discovered. Later, they figured out what was going on there. And this is what happens. The frog picks up tadpoles shortly after they hatch and carries them in its mouth as they develop. And one wonders, one definitely wonders, how does this dude eat? Does he not eat while he's carrying the things? Does he spit them out, go and eat, and come back and collect them? Does he accidentally sometimes swallow his children?Yeah,
好，所以我们看到这样，我就觉得说，那这个青蛙怎么吃呢？啊，它难道就不吃东西了吗？那它会不会偶尔不小心吞下了它的这个小蝌蚪呢？啊，所以这我们都不知道，这大家有兴趣可以去查哈。
It's like this. Oh, shoot.
啊，而且最糟糕的是，还要跟妈妈交代啊。So where's our baby? Oops.
Funny thing.
Yeah. 啊，所以呢，我们可以看到这个地方呢讲后来呢就。Later 就是稍后后来 the real reason 真正的原因for this appearance 这个外表这样鼓鼓的外表真正的原因 was discovered 被人家发现的是什么呢？这个青蛙呢 picks up 它会这个拿起来那 tadpoles 就是那个蝌蚪那这个它会把这个蝌蚪这个干嘛呢？把它 pick up 拿起来 shortly after they hatch 他们孵出来之后没多久他就把蝌蚪这个放到嘴巴里面去了然后呢 and carries them in its mouth 然后带着蝌蚪走在嘴巴里面带着他们走 as they develop 那蝌蚪继续的发育所以在它嘴巴里面发育
So keeping them in the mouth That's what this points to. This, keeping them in the mouth thing, keeps them comfortable and protected from predators for about 2 months. Dude has to do this for 2 months. When they are spit out of the dad's mouth as small frogs. So that is a very protected tadpole. Other tadpoles have to just run around the world being food for everybody, but nope. These tadpoles get to hang out in dad's mouth.
Yeah. 所以这个很特别的一群这种蛙的它的这个蝌蚪真的很特别，因为别的蛙的蝌蚪可能就自己自生自灭去了那但是呢这个达尔文蛙它会带着它的孩子，而且还带很久了所以我们这里看到说呢这个this keeps them comfortable 这会让这个蝌蚪很舒服，而且 protected from predators 而且受到保护不会受到这个掠食者的侵害protect from 就是保护 against 什么的意思所以它得到保护大概多久呢？大概2个月的时间when 就2个月之后呢 they are spit out 他们被吐出来 out of the dad's mouth as small frogs 所以他们进去爸爸的嘴巴的时候呢他们是小蝌蚪然后出来的时候已经变小青蛙了不过我们的问题还是在他会不会不小心吞下去，或者是他这段时间应该大概就不进食了
And then we have the clownfish. Things get really interesting when it comes to clownfish.
那接下来我们要谈的是小丑鱼那它是从雄鱼开始成长starting out as male 所以我们大家就会讲到所有的小丑鱼生下来的时候都是雄性的
All clownfish are born male, though all carry male and female sex organs. So wait a minute, if they're all carrying male and female sex organs, how are we then saying that they're born male? That needs some clarification.
Yeah, 好，所以呢，这个地方讲到说，所有的小丑鱼呢，生下来都是雄性的Though 虽然说他们都 carry 都携带了 male and female sex organs， 他们同时携带了男性和这个雄性跟雌性的性器官那不过我们就要问，如果说它两性的器官都有的话，那我们是怎么样判断它是男的呢这是另外一个问题各位可以去追寻一下这个答案你有兴趣的话
I think it might be more accurate to say they're all born intersex, but then function as male for the first half of their life.
Yeah, 也许呢，因为有一个是 intersex 就它是这个在介于两性之间然后呢，它只不过生下来之后，它的 function 它的作用比较像是 male， 比较像是雄性的比较像是公的。不过这东西各位可以继续去查查看看到底中间的这个机制或者转换变化是怎么样。
So groups of fish are composed of groups of particularly clownfish are composed of a single dominant female. So there's the so-called leader of the group would be the female, and dozens of males. And when she dies, the strongest male in the bunch will shift its sex or will start performing a female role.
好，所以呢，这个一群一群的这个小丑鱼呢 are composed of 它有什么组成呢？由一只single 单一只dominant 就是最强势的一个母鱼所组成，然后呢 and dozens of males 然后搭配数十只的那个雄鱼公鱼然后当这个母鱼死掉的时候 when she dies 最强的最壮的最大的最厉害的那一只雄鱼呢公鱼呢就 in the bunch 就他们这一群里面最厉害的那一只公鱼呢就会 shift its sex 就会转换它的这个性别所以这个很特别很有趣的一个生物现象。
And if you want to read a science fiction novel which kind of plays around with this idea but for humans, you should read The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. Bonus, it has a ice adventure story in the middle of it.
所以如果各位有兴趣的话，对于这种这个性别的转换，雄性雌性这种性别的转换可以看看这个 Angela 刚刚讲的那本书
Now, after a female lays as many as 1,000 eggs, a male will fertilize them and then watch over them for 6 to 10 days until they hatch. So of all of the father roles described in this article, I would say the clownfish has the easiest job. They just have to hang out for 10 days until the baby clownfish come out.
所以感觉起来这个小丑鱼是我们今天谈到各种动物里面大概最轻松的一个那我们这里看到说，在一个母鱼呢，它会下蛋下大概可以 as many as 可以下到多达1000个卵然后呢，这个时候一只公鱼就来干嘛呢 ？fertilizes， 然后就是使它这些卵受精然后 and will then 接下来就 watch over them 就看着这些卵但是呢还好不用看太久大概看6到10天 until they hatch， 它们就孵出来了。
Now, it may be hard to choose exactly which species deserves the Dad of the Year prize, if there is such a thing, but it's safe to say that there are several males that could compete for such an award.
好，也许我们很难选择 exactly 到底哪一个物种呢是 deserves 应得到这个年度最佳爸爸的这样的一个奖项但是呢，我们 it's safe to say that 我们可以很安全的说，就是我们可以肯定的说。有几只这个雄性动物，它可以 compete for 可以争取这样的一个 award。
Now, we have some questions here for you about both days of the article, number one of which is, what is the main idea of this passage?
本文的主旨为何？
The answer is D, male animals that take excellent care of their young.
好，答案是 D， 很会照顾后代的雄性动物。
And number two, why does the writer say the seahorse takes fatherhood to another level?
为何作者说海马的父亲身份更上层楼？
Because the author claims A, that it actually gives birth to its young, which I don't think is actually an accurate characterization of what's going on there.
这里的答案是 A 它会生小海马。不过就像我们刚刚讲的，其实这个他们不是真正的生下这个小海马。
And number three, according to the passage, what did Charles Darwin most likely think when he first saw the frogs in Chile?
好，达尔文我们根据本文，达尔文在智利第一次看到达尔文蛙的时候，他最有可能是什么想法呢？
He probably thought that B, it had inhaled or breathed in a lot of air.
可能答案应该是 B 他最有可能就想说这个达尔文蛙大概吸进了大量的空气。
And number four, how is this passage generally organized?
整体来说，这篇文章是怎么样采用什么样的结构呢？
The answer is D, by comparison and contrast.
答案是 D， 是比较对照的结构。
Okay, that's all there is for today. Please join us again next time for more Ivy English.